Say your full name out loud. The first part is yours. Your parents chose it or you chose it, a sound meant for you alone. But the second part, the surname, the family name, the last name, that one is different. You never picked it. Your parents never picked it. Go back far enough and somebody picked it for your ancestors, and they didn't get a vote either. Here's the part nobody tells you. For most of human history, almost no one had a last name. Not kings, not peasants, not the people who built the cathedrals. One name was all you needed, and it worked fine. So something changed. Something reached down into the lives of ordinary people and pinned a second, permanent, inherited word onto every single one of them. And it wasn't your family that wanted it. Your last name is not an heirloom. It is closer to a serial number, a tag, a tracking code that a powerful institution needed so it could find you, count you, tax you, and never lose you again. This is the story of how the state learned your name. Picture a medieval village. A few hundred people, maybe less. Everyone is born here, dies here, and knows everyone else by sight. In a world that's small, one name is plenty. There is one John. There is one Agnes. When somebody says John, every head turns to the same man because there is only one of him in the whole of your world. This was normal almost everywhere for almost all of history. The Romans were unusual for using extra names, and even that system decayed and vanished. Across most of medieval Europe and across much of the world, a person was simply their given name, and that was the end of it. It worked because memory did the work. The village was the database. Your neighbors held your identity in their heads, and they never confused you with anyone because there was no one else to confuse you with. So if one name worked for 1,000 years, what broke it? The answer is almost embarrassingly simple. There started to be too many Johns. Villages grew, towns swelled. People moved to markets, to cities, to wherever there was work. And suddenly the old trick stopped working, because now there were 3 Johns in one street, and a name alone could no longer tell them apart. So people did the natural thing. They added a tag, not a formal surname, just a handy way to say which John you meant. There were really only 4 kinds of tag, and you carry one of them right now. The first was the father. John, son of William, became John Williamson. That is where Johnson and 1,000 other names come from, the patronymic, the father's name pressed into the child. The second was the job. The man who worked iron was John the Smith, John Smith. The one who baked was Baker. Miller ground the grain. Tailor cut the cloth. These are the most common surnames in the English-speaking world because every village needed those hands. The third was the place. John who lived by the hill was John Hill, by the brook, Brooks. And the fourth was the nickname, plain description that stuck. Brown for his hair, long for his height, young for his age. Notice what all 4 have in common. They came from below, from neighbors, casually, to solve a local problem. Nobody wrote them down, nobody made them stick, and they could change in a single lifetime. Which is exactly what would soon become a problem, not for you, but for the people who wanted to keep track of you. Step back and ask a different question. Who, in all of history, has most needed to tell one person from another? Not the neighbors already knew. It was the people who had never met you and never would, and who still needed something from you. The tax collector, the army recruiter, the landlord drawing up who owed what on his manor, the church recording who was baptized, married, and buried. These institutions could not rely on a village memory because they were not in the village. They worked from paper, from the ledger, the roll, the register, and a ledger has a terrible weakness. It cannot tell 2 Johns apart unless the writing tells it so. Imagine you are a medieval clerk recording who owes the Lord 3 days of labor. You write John. Which John? There are 4 in this hamlet. So you reach for a tag, John the Smith, John William's son. You are not honoring his family. You are protecting your accounts. This is the quiet engine of the whole story. Every time power needed to reach an individual at a distance, to tax him, to draft him, to bind him to a debt, it needed a way to write him down so he could be found again. The casual tags of the village were about to be captured by the cold logic of the page. And once a name is on the page, the next demand is obvious. Make it hold still. Here is the difference that changes everything. A nickname is loose, a surname is locked. In the early days, a tag died with the man. John the Smith might raise a son who became a baker, and the boy would be known as a baker, not a smith. The name described the life. When the life changed, the name changed. That is fine for gossip. It is a nightmare for a tax roll. If the name moves every generation, the ledger loses the thread. The clerk opens last year's book and cannot find the family, because the family is wearing a different word. So the demand hardened into something specific. The name had to become 2 things at once. Fixed, it must not change across a life. And hereditary, it must pass, unchanged, from father to child to grandchild, whatever they did for a living. A smith's grandson who never touched an anvil would still be called Smith, because the name had stopped describing him. It had started identifying him. That is the moment a surname becomes a label, a handle the institution can grab and never let go. For centuries, this crept along on its own, faster among the rich, slower among the poor. But creeping along was not good enough for the modern state. The modern state wanted everyone all at once, so it did something the village clerk never could. It passed a law. There is a word for what the state was reaching for, and it comes from the scholar James C. Scott. The word is legibility. A society is legible when those in power can read it from the center, when they can look at a register and see clearly who everyone is, where they live, and what they owe. A society of one-named villagers with loose tags that drift and overlap is illegible. It is a blur. You cannot tax a blur. You cannot conscript a blur. You cannot police a blur. The permanent, hereditary surname is one of the most powerful tools ever invented for turning that blur into a list. It is, in Scott's reading, less a gift to families than an instrument of the state, a way to fix each person to a name the way you fix a pin to a map. And once you see it that way, the historical record snaps into focus. The push for fixed surnames did not come welling up from happy families wanting heirlooms. Again and again, it was imposed from above by governments deliberately for taxation, conscription, and control. Most striking of all, in many places the people resisted. They did not want to be pinned down. They knew, without reading any scholar, what a permanent name on a register would let the authorities do to them. And in case after case, the authorities did it anyway. Look at the calendar of orders and a pattern emerges. The permanent surname was not adopted. In much of the world, it was decreed. In the late 1700s, the Habsburg monarchy ordered the Jews of its empire to take fixed, hereditary German surnames, so the state could tax them and call them up for military service. Officials handed out the names. People who had lived for centuries by patronymic alone were now stamped with a permanent family word, by command. Napoleon pushed the same logic across the lands he conquered, requiring populations to register stable surnames the new bureaucratic state could track. One country after another followed. Through the 1800s, as modern government spread, conscript armies grew, and the census became a machine of rule. And it kept happening into the 20th century. In the 1920s, Turkey passed a surname law compelling every citizen to adopt a fixed family name, part of building a modern, countable nation-state. Then there is the darker edge. Colonial administrators imposed naming systems on the peoples they ruled, overriding older traditions, because a subject you can name is a subject you can govern. The same tool that let a kind clerk find a widow's pension also let an empire find every taxable head in a conquered land. The surname, it turns out, is neutral the way a key is neutral. It simply opens the lock. The question is only ever who is holding it. So let us name the thing plainly. Your last name is a technology, not a family treasure that the state happened to write down the other way around. It is a piece of administrative machinery that families happen to inherit. It was engineered mostly to do a job, to make you findable. Think about everything it now anchors. Your name on a tax file, on a draft list, on a deed, a passport, a criminal record, a credit score, a death certificate. The surname is the thread that ties all of those documents to one human being and keeps them tied across a whole life and then across generations. Without it, the modern state of paper and database simply could not hold you. And here is the unsettling symmetry. The very thing that lets the state find you to help you, to pay you a pension, to count you in, is the same thing that lets it find you to tax you, to draft you, to watch you. There is no version of the surname that does one without the other. The hand that records is the same hand that reaches. We tend to think identity flows outward, from the self to the world. But the surname flows the other way. It was pressed onto you from the outside, by an institution that needed you to be countable before you were ever born. You did not name yourself. You were named so that you could be numbered. That is the real origin of the last name. Not love, not lineage. Legibility. So here is where it leaves you. The next time you sign your full name on a form, a contract, the bottom of a screen, look at that second word again. The surname you never chose. Somewhere behind it is a crowded village with too many Johns, a clerk reaching for a tag to save his accounts, an emperor's decree handing out family names by the hundred, a census official turning a blur of people into a clean, taxable list. None of them knew you. None of them asked. And between them, they decided what you would be called for the rest of your life and what your children will be called after you. Your first name is a gift. Your last name is an address, a way for power to write you down and find you again. You have been carrying a tracking number your whole life and answering to it proudly, and nobody ever told you what it was for. Which makes you wonder, how much of what feels most personal about you, your name, your number, your record, was never really about you at all, but about somebody somewhere needing to keep count. That's what this channel is for. I'm glad you're here, and I'll see you next time.